Hello to my air signs, Libra, Aquarius, and Gemini. This is the Scorpio lunar eclipse. You'll find the timestamps for your rising sign listed below. Hello Libra rising. This is your horoscope for the Scorpio lunar eclipse happening on Saturday the 6th of May at 3:36 a.m. if you're in the southern hemisphere with me. I'm recording this mid-season, Libra, so I'm kind of feeling a bit like I'm short-circuiting, but welcome, here we are. This is your reading. I'm going to make it a bit more tarot heavy, I think, than the ins and outs of the astrology. As much as I am so enjoying kind of finding the different pathways to explaining this stuff and sort of teaching as much as I can about what it is that I know, I do know that my tarot reading skills are what drew me to this whole world in the first place. And in times of eclipse, in times of complete, like dissolution of control, we can talk to spirit directly through these little things. So let's have a little look at Scorpio. Scorpio is your second house, which is our resources. It's our financial situation. It's what we have and how we work with that, how we use that to benefit ourselves and to provide a life for those that we love. So the first Scorpio eclipse that happened in this house for you was a year ago. It was March 16th, I think. And so this was the first short circuiting that occurred in your second house of resources and financial value. Value is an interesting word too, because as much as we can sort of talk about money in the second house, we can also talk about our value system, what it is that we do believe in and what we hold dear in terms of our life principles. How valuable is finance or not in our world? And to have these eclipses happening for a year, you know, there's sort of like the lights have been sort of flipped on and off. There's been different, you know, it's sort of like, it could have been a case of, oh, I'm going to do this. Oh no, forget it. I'll do this. Or it's like, oh, I've been doing this for so long, and I tell you what, I actually just can't stand it anymore. I can't stand to, like, I need, something's got to give. That could have been this eclipse energy as well. It's sort of like I'm trying my hardest to figure out what on earth I'm bloody here for and what it is, you know, how can my resources be of benefit? You know, how am I earning money? How am I spending my days? It's been so funny I've been doing this jazz for a while now, but not as long as you might think. Before all of this, I was an entertainer, which I guess this is sort of quite entertaining too. I think that what I've been learning and from the guidance that I've been getting from my mentors is that everything that we did in life before can aid what we're doing now. And if you're like me, you've sort of done all sorts of things for money, right? You know, all sorts of different jobs, different angles of like paying the rent, putting a roof over your head, putting food in the cupboard, you know, earning that buck. I think that I'm sort of at an age right now where I'm recognizing the difference between the freedom that I've provided myself in my lifestyle up until this point and just the reality of inflation, how much more expensive it is to just get the bottom line covered. And so if that's what you're experiencing right now, Libra, it might be a feeling of, oh God, well, it's sort of like up until this point I was okay. Like it was sort of like I could do what I needed to do to get by. But now it's becoming more and more untenable, more and more expensive. And I just don't know how I'm going to keep going. Like, am I going to have to work harder? That's maybe something that might have been happening for you. Particularly, I think it's interesting that these eclipses, the eclipse period that we're talking about is like a year in Scorpio. Scorpio is intense. Scorpio does, dredge up from the bottom. So there's probably a lot of unconscious things about your self-worth that might have been showing themselves at this time, Libra. It's sort of like, okay, so I've been doing this to this point. I actually can't stand it anymore. I can't do this, or something's got to show itself for me so I can continue, because I think that I am worthy of a safe, protected life. But what am I going to have to do? Like expand my working week to twice the working hours that I already put in? If you're self-employed too, I mean, I'm sorry, honey, that's just the cross to bear. Like, you probably recognize that if you have your own business, there's no clocking in, clocking out. Maybe that's what's happened for you as well, Libra. You've transitioned from working for somebody else into working for yourself, and have sort of realized, oh, holy moly, I actually can't clock out. And I also need to continually produce. Otherwise, there's no paycheck. That could be something that might be a bit sort of destabilizing too. The tarot that I got is the Knight of Wands in reverse. I got the Page of Pentacles and the Queen of Pentacles. Now, this is interesting little triptych here. I think that what I first of all want to talk about is this like false start. There's something here which is quite like passionate or magic, or, you know, think about fire. Fire is Aries, Leo, Sagittarius. Fire is sort of confidence. There's something that was sort of maybe offered to you as a jolt, and it was like maybe confronting, or maybe sort of like you needed to wait for like the after the flash of potential. You've had to sit and sort of wait for, you've had to think about it. This feels to me kind of like not an unstable offer or not like a the night. We've got to think about these knights, you know, they're always moving, they're all on horseback, they're sort of they're charging forwards. This little baby's arrived in reverse, so I almost feel that maybe even this knight has like stopped in their tracks, and they're actually rethinking in their head. Perhaps you were given like a job opportunity, or there was something has shown itself to you. Maybe it was an idea that you had. You thought to yourself, oh, if we think about second house, I could do this for a living, or I could reroute my business ventures, or all of my experience in business land. I'm thinking about how I can reroute it, and maybe I'll do this. But almost, yeah, you can see that sort of like upside down. It's sort of like, hold your horses. You know, the Knight of Wands in reverse is really hold your horses. Because moving forward, there's the Page of Pentacles and the Queen of Pentacles, and this is much more grounded. This feels to me something much more substantial and probably much healthier in relationship to your second house, Libra, to your resources, your finance. Pentacles are great for that. Whenever you see pentacles or coins, sometimes they're called in the tarot, you can relate them to things in life that have some sense of materiality, physical reality. And the Page and the Queen they're part of the same tribe, but they're different levels of development. What I see here after this flash of like, right, that's it, that's what I'm doing, poof, you kind of feel like, yeah, it feels like this eclipse is sort of bringing with it a bit of like a smoke bomb. And as that smoke dissipates and relaxes a bit, you're going to see clear into a conversation with this Page of Pentacles. There's someone else, or there's some other option that is being offered to you, kind of meekly, I think. When we think about the pages, you know, they're in training. They're probably maybe someone that's not so good at business, or not so developed in business land, but you can sort of rely on, you can trust a Pentacles, part of the Pentacles family, you know. They've got earth to them. They've got a sense of grounding to them. And this Queen of Pentacles here, you know, I think that's a nice coupling right there. And you can see probably in the images of these cards, there's like, that they're handing their pentacles to one another. I see this queen as someone who is probably a bit more wise to business and how that world operates. And they're providing some advice to this page. And the page probably has something, a bit of like a fresh idea. Sort of like, this is what I've got in mind. How can we start it? And maybe separate to what this was. And it's not to say that we don't trust the Wands royal family, we need fire and magic and passion and everything like that. But I think at this time, particularly with all of the sort of turbulence and the unsteady ground that these eclipses in Scorpio and Taurus have provided us over the past, in Taurus, it's been like a year and a half, 18 months. And the story was picked up in Scorpio a year ago, as I said. So if you've been following my horoscopes for a while, you can actually go back and listen to the Scorpio eclipses, the readings that I gave there. The last Scorpio eclipse reading I gave was 6 months ago, I think. So go back and have a little listen to the messages that were found there. Because I think when I think of you, Libra, I think of like, like that great sort of discovery of like the difference between equality and equity. Whenever I say that, I always think of that beautiful illustration of, I'm sure that you've seen it before, but there's 3 folks standing in front of a fence, and the tall one doesn't have a little box to stand on. The one in the middle has a midway height box, and the short one has a much taller box, but their view is all the same, and that's equity. Whereas equality is them all standing on the same size box. And so the tall person is standing on the same size box as the other 2 that are shorter than them. And so, of course, their view is much clearer, but the shortest one still can't see over the fence. That's, that was a bit muddled, but, like, I'm sure that you've seen it before. I think you can look, I can't remember who drew it, but it's a really simple visualization of the difference between equity and equality. Some folks have had a head start in life, and some really are far way back. There's another beautiful visual representation of the difference between equity and equality too, and I can't remember who published it, but it's a race. So it's a sort of like a short distance sprinting race, but the group of students that are being invited into this race are given different starting points on the basis of their race and on the basis of their financial situation. There's a whole bunch of different questions, or it's like yes or no questions. Like, are your parents still together? Yes or no. If yes, take a step forward. That kind of thing. And so by the time all of these questions are asked, the folks at the beginning, some folks have had a real heads up in this life, and some really haven't. And as a Libra, it's up to you to recognize the difference between equality and equity, and to get a heads up. And maybe this is what you've been experiencing, Libra. Maybe you need a higher box to stand on because things have been tough. And so if we're looking at this second house, your resources and what you consider your value to be, there may be some stuff that needs to shed at this lunar eclipse insofar as your guilt about not being as developed perhaps as your peers or as other folks your age or stuff like that, you know, because maybe they had a head start in life and you didn't. Yeah. But I think that whatever's happening here that's separate, so obviously there was the first poof with this, let that dissipate, let the eclipse happen, but then the smoke will clear, and this is nice. This is nice, and maybe in this pictorial, we can see that the Queen of Pentacles recognizes that the Page of Pentacles needs a bit of equity, needs a bit of a head start to get something happening, to get something up and running. Yeah, it's a nice message. All right, Libra, that's your reading. I hope that it made sense, although you know what, like, you're welcome. I'll be with you in 2 weeks, and we're going to speak about Taurus. We've got a new moon in Taurus, which has been something that we've not been able to experience for the past 18 months without an eclipse. So we get a new moon in 2 weeks, and then in October we get another eclipse, which is the final cab off the rank. It's a little confusing, but I'm going to be here and guiding you through it. Taurus is your 8th house, which is, you know, go back and listen to my other horoscopes, but it packs a punch, the 8th. And I'm sure that eclipses there have been something to remark upon, and maybe something that has you thinking about this difference between equity and equality, about guidance or lack of guidance. Yeah. Anyway, head to umaruby.com and you can get your birth chart read by me if you've not already. If you're wanting to know the difference between your sun sign, your moon sign, your rising sign, all of that kind of stuff, I do recite these horoscopes with the rising sign at the forefront of my mind, because that's how the chart is cast. And so if there's questions there that you have about the meaning of that, then send me an email or allow me to read your birth chart and I can show you. I can show you what I'm talking about. Anyway, I'll speak to you in 2 weeks. You take care, Libra. Bye. Hello, Aquarius rising. This is your horoscope for the Scorpio lunar eclipse happening on the 6th of May at 3:36 a.m. if you're in the Southern Hemisphere with me. So it's an early a.m. eclipse. It's also the final chapter in a 3-part series. Now, at eclipse time, we know that sort of anything's possible. There's kind of like a power outage. There's a pulling the proverbial plug on the energetic intricacies of life. And so rather than maybe, I know the last couple of horoscopes I've given, there has been the diagram and sort of pointing to the different aspects and stuff like that, which I'm really like obsessed with and down with, and if that's a way that you like to learn, then awesome. I kind of felt that it was pertinent for you to see my face this time as well, though, because I'm a tarot reader first and an astrologer second. Am I either of those things, or am I none of those things? Who knows? But I feel like it's nice to have a bit of company during eclipse season. And because Scorpio is where your 10th house rests, your 10th house is your public self, your career and your legacy, you know, what we're known for, all occurs in the 10th house. And so for that to be so unstable, and it's been unstable for about a year now. Like the first lunar eclipse we had there was on the 16th of May last year. That was the first kind of like chapter into this awakening or rerouting. And with Pluto as well, they've just stationed retrograde a couple of days ago in your sign and are about to regress back into Capricorn, but then enter again into Aquarius. You know, it's this rebirth vibe that I've been banging on about for a long time, Aquarius, that I want to kind of really remind you about, and not to sort of drag you through it in any way, but to just sort of like hold my hand up in a little glimmer of like, I got you, babe. I support you. It's all right. If there's been things that have had to like shed or shift or like fall away in your recent history, then if we look at the chart, if we look at the astrology, and it's not to sort of, we don't look at this stuff to sort of be doomed to it. It's not a fate that we have to suffer in any capacity. But if life has been turbulent lately, we can look to the astrology and recognize that we're being guided to look further into what does need to fall away. And this can be really confronting for 10th house. You know, as I said, this is public perception, your career, your legacy, what you're known for, you know, what you sort of devote most of your time to, how you wish to be sort of perceived in this life. You know, Scorpio is a sign that does dredge up things that have sort of sunk to the bottom. Scorpio is incredible at like diving deep. Scorpio is quite protective as well. You know, it's fixed water, so there is like a carapace of ice over a lot of depth in Scorpio. And so at an eclipse, you know, I just have this image of like an ice pick, you know, sort of smash, 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 you know, what's being brought up to the surface, what needs to be seen that wasn't, that couldn't be acknowledged before. How's work been going, Aquarius? How's it all been? How have you been relating to your, you know, body of work or your life's mission? Has there been things that in the past year that have been shaking you up to a point where you're like, actually, I can't do this anymore? Or has there been like a bit of like a sort of like flip-flopping? It's sort of like, oh, that's what I thought that I was going to be doing, but now there's this path that I just can't ignore anymore. That could be something that's happening as well in these eclipses. From my perspective, from where I'm feeling at the moment, like, and it's probably, you know, it's like one of those things, like you sort of get so wrapped up in, when you study this stuff, you kind of preempt it a bit because you're always kind of looking, you know, 2 weeks, a month in advance to see, you know, and trying to sew together, stitch together the clues of what might occur or what might show up for yourself and for other folks. And so, you know, psychosomatic, I don't think so, but it's sort of like we're in the midst of this eclipse season, and so it does feel unstable. The energy on planet Earth does feel like in parts of life it's surging, and in other parts it's flickering. You know, it doesn't feel like there's an even balance at present. And so this eclipse axis that's been happening between your fourth, your home, your privacy, your roots, where it is you steal away to for privacy and comfort, and also the most public and visible part of you, like that's high stakes to feel unstable in those two areas. Do you know what I mean, Aquarius? It's sort of like there's a lot of plutonic vibe happening for you right now. You know, Pluto in the first house, the house of the soul, you know, it's sort of like this little convo or this series of events might almost have us kind of looking extra specially deeply or insistently on your 10th house, on your career, your vocation. What work are you doing at the moment, Aquarius, and is it feeding you? And if it's not, then go with the urgency of the Scorpio eclipse, this final one of 3. So, you know, think a year ago on the 16th of May, and then October 25th of last year too, there was another like surge to that point in life. So this is the final sort of crescendo, and so you don't have to do anything. I'm really urging you. You don't have to sort of like act on this, Aquarius. You just kind of have to sort of allow it to sort of, wash over you. But then pick up the pieces and look at their messages. Like look at what you've learned from whatever turbulence has occurred in that space for you. I got some nice cards. I got the Knight of Cups. I got the Nine of Swords. And I got the Knight of Swords. I really like this triptych, and I'm going to be looking at this Nine of Swords in the center. And I don't think that we're not unfamiliar with this card, are we, Aquarius? It's popped up a couple of times in the readings that I've given for you. There's anguish in this card. There's definitely a repetition of thought. That Rolodex of the mind seems to be sort of spinning out of control. And, it's kind of, when we think of the swords, we think of our mind, our thoughts, and, a collection of 9 is almost too many to deal with for one person at a time. I don't know if you have experience of like inner voices and stuff like that. God, I do. This is the card for my moon sign, Gemini. So I'm very familiar with the Nine of Swords and the plight, but also the lesson of this card too. Things like repetitive thoughts can have us feel like we're like we've lost it. If we're unconscious of the idea of separating ourselves from the mind, then we can misconstrue those thoughts as the truth. And 9, abysmal nego thoughts on a loop, that's a lot of hard truth to absorb again and again and again and again. And we can start to kind of consider ourselves to be like really unstable, and that we've kind of lost it, and that there's no way out. The trick is with this card, and the trick is with any kind of repetition of the mind, is to, and it sounds a bit, sounds a bit boring, but like to catch that moment, and it's not to push them out. You can't, it's impossible. There's too many of them. But it's a separation of the body and of the mind. And it's trickier than than it sounds. It's an easy thing to say. Just separate your thoughts from your body. It's kind of hard. But once you do that, and those thoughts will continue to occur and they can roll over, but once you can sort of separate your body from that, and you can hear them out and allow them to say what they need to say, but then you can start to sift through those 9 swords and figure out, okay, so which ones need attention and which ones are just effing bullshit, which ones have just been, like on a loop, going around and around and around and around, based off perhaps stuff that's happened in the past that has formed this like one version of your opinion of yourself. And if you can recognize it for what it is, maybe a bit of a dull blade, then you can start to like not file them away, kind of hear them out and then set them down. That phrase like 1, 2, 3, back in the room? One of my best mates, Chet's, always says that, 1, 2, 3, back in the room. It's good because we can get so like lost in there, that spell, that action of just being like, whoosh, back, okay, present. Yeah, I've got you. Sure. Now, this is the central energy, and I think that we've got the Knight of Cups here as maybe aiding and abetting some of those difficult thoughts. There may be a little bit of past trauma that I'm kind of feeling in this reading, Aquarius. So, yeah, like we can't hold it against ourselves either, it's sort of, if the body is, the body is a slave to the rhythm of the mind, and the mind is always trying to protect us at all times, protect us from potential danger. And sometimes, we sort of are fine and dandy, and then something will occur in front of us, or a situation will trigger something that's sort of latent in our unconscious that reminds us of a time that we were really unsafe, or a time that we were, it's a trigger response, trauma response. And that can all be like a deluge of the same physical reaction that we had long ago, especially if we haven't talked about it before in therapy, or otherwise, particularly therapy. It's really, when dealing with post-traumatic stress or trigger responses from past traumas, the best way to negotiate that or to go through with it is to really to speak to a therapist, so a psychologist who is trained in these sorts of techniques, and that has the white flag of non-judgment to hear you out. There's a lot of shame that we can sort of bring with us into our present from times gone by, and this could be things that were said to us. This could be, the experience of life itself and society's expectations. I'm thinking 10th and 4th. So I'm thinking, trigger 4th house trauma that's some of the hardest trauma, that's our bloodline. That's how we were raised. That's sticky. That's hard. That's hard, babe. And that's probably some of the stuff that you need to be most gentle with yourself as well, because that trauma comes from much younger versions of you. The little one of you is in your 4th. There's a lot that we hang on to from our formative years, how we were taught to relate to the world, or how our intelligence maybe was, criticized. Our safety, how that was either, oh golly, you understand what I'm saying. And so these eclipses is what I'm kind of feeling is like it's, if this is happening for you and you are feeling sort of unsafe, and these emotional sort of ties or tethers from the past have sort of clung on to you, then you're going to be okay. And I think that if we can look to this Knight of Swords as like a clearing, like look at that sword is quite sharp. And that's the truth. That's the moving truth of the current moment. And so your reality right now, it's like there's techniques. One of my beautiful friends, who I've not spoken to in a while, her name's Eloise. She's an incredible astrologer. And she talks about the tapping technique, which, there's been quite a few people that have tried to teach me that over my life. And it took me up until now to really recognize just that beautiful physical ritual of tapping to bring the mind or bring the body back into consciousness, separate from what's going on in here, to bring it back down to earth, to ground it a bit. Yeah. I think lately I've been getting, I drink too much coffee and I get anxiety, so I'm really hyper aware of what I need to be putting in my body and not putting in my body. Yeah, look. Yeah, we don't look at the astrology and we don't ask the cards about anything that we must fear. I think that there's sort of something about the sort of fortune telling aspect of this stuff which can be sort of misread or misused sometimes. If there's a fate that we're doomed to suffer, or if there's something that we can't get past, like the tapping. That's what I use this stuff for. That's why I read a chart. That's why I read the cards, because it does. It's like 1, 2, 3, back in the room, Your messages from your your spirit guides or messages from your ancestors, messages from the planets themselves, the gods and the goddesses and all of the other non-binary beings up there, makes us feel less alone. And I think that that's probably the major message. Stop me if you've heard it before, but this is why we do this stuff, Aquarius. So in times of feeling destitute, we feel less alone at this time. That's your reading. Love you heaps. I'll be with you in 2 weeks and we'll discuss the new moon in Taurus. So this will be a clearing for us, Aquarius. This will be a moment for you to be able to look at your 4th house, your home, your roots, your ancestry, your privacy, and to have some say in that too. Where do I wish to live? How do I provide comfort and safety for myself and those that I love? How do I approach receiving, nurturing, and how do I nurture? So I'll be able to do that in 2 weeks. That'll be nice because I have not been able to for a little while. We've had to leave it up to the hands of the eclipses. So I'll speak to you then. If you'd like your birth chart read, if you'd like to know the difference between your sun sign, your moon sign, your rising sign, I do give these readings with the rising sign specifically in mind for the way that the houses are cast. So if that's language that you're new to, I can read your birth chart and I can walk you through it. I can explain to you the differences and the reason why we look at a chart this way. I'll speak to you in 2 weeks, Aquarius. Love you very much. You take care. Bye. Hello, Gemini rising. This is your horoscope for the Scorpio lunar eclipse on May the 6th at 3:36 a.m. if you're in the southern hemisphere with me. So it's going to be a dead of night experience. And the third in a series, the third chapter of a story that we've been telling and talking about for about 12 months now. So one date to think about gently is the 16th of May in 2022. And this was the first Scorpio lunar eclipse that we have had probably, I think it's sort of not once in a lifetime, but it's definitely the first in the last 20 years, I think, that would have happened at this specific kind of degree. And so Scorpio for you, Gemini, is your 6th house, which is where we come into relationship with our body, our physical vessel, our health. It's also how we relate to the animal kingdom, to pets, to the rhythm of the day, to our responsibilities, and how we kind of get ourselves, sort of amp ourselves up or drop into meditation to exist in repetition. If you have like a meditation practice, or if you are someone that does, practice yoga or all of those, sorts of different embodied practices that do ask us to really drop into the physical self, to clear the mind, then the 6th house for you is probably something you're quite familiar with. And it's also probably something that you'll be able to kind of deal with as far as eclipses. Because remember, when there's an eclipse, there's kind of like someone's pulled the plug on the universe. Everything that we've sort of been rolling with and becoming in tune with, with the planetary alignments and changes and following the moon and all of that kind of thing. When there's an eclipse, it's sort of like, it's like a short circuit. So if we use that language, and we use that language in relationship to your body, to your health, how have you been? And is everything running in full working order? Have you been being kind to yourself, and have you been eating the right foods and getting the right exercise and sort of, opening the right portals and channels with your physical being? Have you been out of step or out of rhythm or in a funk lately? And if we look at these dates, I mean, it was May 16th, which was the first lunar eclipse in Scorpio. Then October 25th of last year was the solar eclipse in Scorpio, both south node, dragon's tail eclipses. So kind of like, yeah, like blinking lights is what I'm seeing. So now this isn't to sort of like preempt any sort of, like major worry or occurrence in that space. But I think I always like to think about astrology in terms of polarity. So if we think about the 6th house, which is very physical and practical and grounded in reality, and the 12th house is much more etheric and unknown. The 12th house is dreamland. And so we've been having eclipses here for the past 18 months. And so it almost feels like it could be like you've sort of plugged into a different channel, Gemini. And there's been messages from your dreams or messages from your unconscious self, your spirit guides maybe, that have been urging their way into some sense of physical reality. And they've been affecting or coloring the way that you go about your day. Yeah, I think that if there has been something that you've been putting off about your health, like if it's been a trip to the dentist or, something with your breathing, whatever it, if there's been something that's sort of been like, oh, I probably should get that checked out. Oh, I'll put it off. Doesn't matter. I'll get a checkup next week. It might be really great to get that checkup, just to make sure that, get a grease and oil change. That's a great thing to do. And probably, yeah, I'm sort of giving you this advice. I'm also giving myself this advice too. I think sometimes when we are so preoccupied in our 12th house, in our spiritual practice, in the limitlessness of that environment, the physical parts of our lives can sometimes fall by the wayside. And yeah, this is the message for you, Gemini. I don't know why, and it's probably, advice for you, and it's advice for me too. Check out the physical system. Be in tune with it. Really listen to it. Really listen to what your physical self needs. And pay close attention to how you exist in a day. And are there points in that day that feel a bit unhealthy, or it's sort of like this is a vicious cycle. This is something that's coming to me as well, Gemini. It's sort of like, okay, so like this repetition in my day-to-day is actually really unhealthy, and I need to step away from this. The eclipse will show you. The eclipse it'll highlight that. And if you think about your life a year ago, if you think about your life in May of last year, and see what was happening and occurring for you then, and notice the similarities. Are you still in the same rhythm? Are you still in this? Is your daily routine on the same path, or has it changed drastically? Or is it about to change drastically? That's a catch-22 with the eclipses, because we can't really it's like when we're sort of encouraged and instructed not to, sort of lay low really, and just sort of allow the changes to happen. There'll be things in life that present themselves to you, and there'll be signposts that will be very difficult to ignore. So this horoscope's here for you just simply to keep your eyes peeled, I reckon, Gemini, to keep your eyes and ears open, and to pay extra special care and attention to listen to your physical being, to your body. I wonder if you hang out with animals very much. I wonder if you've got a relationship with a pet. Yeah, think about that too. Think about your animal friends, your loved ones, and think about who was in your company a year ago, and think about who's in your company now. The definitions of all of the houses vary, and depending on how absorbent you are, they can mean what feels to be kind of like quite a broad definition. And so I know that kind of like physical self and health, practicality, and then to throw in pets as well seems quite strange. But when I think of the sixth house, I see like, it's a clear image to me of like reality in opposition to the 12th, which is like multicolored, fragmented light. It's psychedelic in the 12th. The 6th is like, it's real, no less beautiful. But I think, and when thinking about pets, it's sort of like, we develop these relationships without language, don't we? To these beautiful animals, we feel love and guidance and support from earthly creatures that aren't based in language. We can tell a dog time and time and time again that we love them. We can't really know for sure that they know what the word love means. The word, they know the feeling though. Yeah. I'm looking ahead in my life too. I look forward to being a proud pet owner once more. I have a great affection for the animal kingdom, especially for dogs and for birds. Sometimes, especially lately, because everything's been sort of in blossom and in bloom around here, there's been a lot of chatty birds. And I've taken lessons from animals over the last 3 years of my life with a greater intensity maybe than I had before. I'd maybe taken it I'd taken it for granted, the rapport that I have with the living world. But lately, if an owl flies over my head, which I'll be honest with you has happened more than 3 times, which is rare. You can always tell that it's an owl because you can't hear it, you can feel it. You have to look up, and because they're so silent in their approach, All of these things. I don't know if this is a journey that's right for you, Gemini, but I don't know. This is 6th house stuff for me. Might not be for every astrologer or everyone that reads charts, but I think that our relationship with the animal kingdom, if that's to be a point of note in the life of an individual, that could definitely happen in the 6th house. So if we're talking eclipses there, listen to your body, so listen to your animal friends too. Now, in your tarot, I got the 3 of Pentacles, I got the High Priestess, and I got the Page of Pentacles. And I like this very much. And I think that if we look at our High Priestess as our center anchor point, this is our intuition. All of the major secrets of the tarot lie within each and every single one of us. If we can identify with the Fool, number 0, we can consider the Fool's journey as our own, around the wheel, around the zodiac, around the tarot. The second individual that the Fool meets after the Magician, which is very glamorous, a big magic trick, the second individual is the High Priestess. And the Fool asks every single question that they could think of to the High Priestess about life and about the journey, what's going to happen. I just saw this Magician, they pulled a rabbit out of a hat. The High Priestess probably has more answers than the Magician does. High Priestess doesn't say anything, There's a silence and a knowing and an understanding that it's up to the fool to carry around on the journey and to learn these lessons for themselves. It's nice. The Page of Pentacles and the Three of Pentacles feels to me like there's an extra piece about to click into the puzzle. At this eclipse, I wonder if let me know, keep me in mind, and if you can remember, send me a message if this materializes, Gemini. But I suspect that you're going to be met with someone, and this could be animal, vegetable, or mineral. Doesn't have to be a human being, but there's someone that's going to arrive in your daily life, in your rhythm, and they're going to stay for a while, and they're going to bring with them something quite useful. Now, if I'm going to tie all of this back up to the first bit of this reading, it could be there could be someone nesting in the tree out the front of your place you didn't recognize. Could be it could be anyone. But they're coming to you with something to offer. They're coming to you with an extra piece of the puzzle. And I get this sense of, you can see the Three of Pentacles is all about collaboration, right? It's about working together. It's about different skill sets, but focused in on working to the same goal, the same objective. But because I've been talking so much about animals in this reading, I just have a feeling it's an animal. I'll be honest with you. And I don't know if you're an animal person. You might not be. You might be like, oh, yuck. That's the last thing I need. But there's something here about pet is the wrong word, but it's a new friend. And it's a new friend that's going to aid in your continuation of your work, your tasks. It's going to help you out. Let me know if it happens. I'm feeling self-conscious about this now, Gemini. That's out on a limb. Listen to the trees, listen to the birds, listen to the animals. If there's a new member of your family, remember to let me know what happened. All right, that's your reading, Gemini. Yeah, eclipses are funny things, and I think that, it's like I'm recording these right in the center of it, so I'm doing all that I can to sort of go with the kind of unstable feeling right now. But I think I've found a nice place to land, which is a little bit of fantasy too. Eclipses between your 12th and your 6th can allow for a bit of fantasy into the grounded, cold, hard reality of life. Write down the messages that you get from other entities. I'm looking at this plant now too. Write down the messages that you receive from other entities on this planet that don't use spoken language to express themselves. You'll be surprised what they have to tell you. All right, Gemini, you can head to umaruby.com and get your birth chart read by me if you've not already. I can explain to you the difference between your sun sign, your moon sign, and in particular your rising sign. I do write these horoscopes for the rising sign because the house system is laid bare because of the rising sign. But if that's language that sort of doesn't quite stick with you, then book yourself a birth chart reading and I can explain to you everything that I know about this stuff. But I'll be speaking to you in 2 weeks for the new moon in Taurus, which is something that's quite refreshing and something that we haven't had for a little while. And this will be a sort of active moment for you to journey deeper in your dreamland. Rather than it being so frenetic, you'll have greater access. So that could be exciting. But I'll speak to you then, Gemini. You take care. Bye.